On this day, the young savior Harry Potter, a freshman at Hogwarts, learned that a fifth-year transfer student had arrived at his college. He asked curiously, "Mr. Lind, where did you study magic before transferring schools?" After hearing this, Lind smiled slightly and said, "Oh my, in first grade, I served as the chief mage at Winterburg. In second grade, I studied pyroxene magic at the Royal Academy. In third grade, I conducted practical training in Middle-earth. In fourth grade, I went to Candlestick and built my own mage tower at the Bode's gate." It sounds unbelievable, but what are your plans for this year? If we find a way to build a floating city, we also need to establish our own esoteric teachings. Perhaps we can also help Professor Dumbledore solve a little trouble, such as a snake-like person who is not very friendly. Journey through the heavens, Harry Potter, The Elder Scrolls, The Elder Ring, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Gate of Bode, Esoteric Simulator keywords of the novel. All heavens. Hogwarts transfer students no pop-ups, all heavens. Hogwarts transfer students TXT complete collection download, all heavens. Hogwarts transfer students latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. People in Harry Potter, just becoming a wizard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. People in Harry Potter, just becoming a wizard July 1991. Southeastern England, adjacent to London, borders Surrey County on the Thames River. The weather with strong winds and light rain is a typical marine climate, and pedestrians on the road do not take umbrellas and walk quickly through the streets in the rain. When their wandering gaze swept over the ordinary streets, they would always make a brief stop on a foreigner. The indifferent Englishman would not meddle in his own affairs, allowing this bewildered Eastern man to squat foolishly on the roadside. Linda was wearing light blue chenille pajamas. He held his mobile phone in his left hand and his instant noodles fork in his right hand. On the fork was a lock of red luocefen. These luocefen finally fell to the ground and failed to fall into Linda's mouth. He was completely stunned, as if being stared at by Medusa's gaze. In the last second, he was still squatting in the teacher's dormitory, enjoying his midnight snack and brushing his phone. The next second, he will be wandering on the streets of a foreign country, exposed to the rain and wind. Just a simple explanation can help you understand what his tragic situation really is. Lind must have traveled, he knew it himself, but he didn't expect his journey to be so hasty. They will at least start the game with a cold and trembling sensation. He ate luocefen at home, read a novel, and suddenly wore it. The culprit was on the back of his left hand. A sea blue gate-shaped mark. This is the only abnormal thing on Lind, who has lived for over 30 years and cannot be explained by common sense. 3 days before crossing the river, Lind had a strange dream, in which it was pitch black and the void was filled with many strange creatures blowing horns. Their shapes only appeared in the most absurd dreams caused by a tumultuous hangover, and these promoters praised Lind with solemn and flattering strange language. He didn't understand a word. After waking up from this dream, Lind had an additional door-shaped mark on the back of his hand. Others cannot see the mark, but when Lind gazes at the mark, a piece of information comes to mind. Before crossing over, this message is as follows. World I, countdown. Now this information has changed. Lind stared at the mark. World I, arrived, World 2. Countdown 99.58, after 1 minute, the countdown changed to 99.57. Lind is really numb now, his legs are numb, and his heart is also numb. Bada. When luocefen fell to the ground, Linda frowned. He stood up and looked around, the place looked a bit familiar to him. Walking along the street for a while, Lind could see that although there were many differences in details, this seemed to be the place where the protagonist Harry grew up in the movie Harry Potter. Zhutian District, Privet Drive, a fictional place in a novel. But the street signs are clearly written. When studying in the past, Lind's roommate was a loyal fan of the Harry Potter series. He would usually replicate the food that appeared in the books, record videos, and post them on YouTube. Lind is not particularly familiar with the Harry Potter series, as he has only watched the first 2 movies. However, he knows the general plot, not only influenced by his roommates, but also because he has read a lot of fan fiction at some point. With some subtle intuition, Lind found 4 Privet Drive all the way, which was the address of the Dursley family where Harry stayed. The layout here is simple and ordinary, just like all the single-family villas of the middle class in the city, with no tourists traveling back and forth, no flash or camera shutter clicks. On the neat side of the street, the entire row of houses have the same architectural style, quiet and completely unrelated to magic. On the way over, Lind had already learned about some historical background on the old TV in the street window. It was in 1991, in March of that year, Lind was 4 years old. In December of that year, the red flag landed and the giant was buried at the hands of a traitor. It was also in July of that year, and now, the savior Harry Potter received an admission letter from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Fate intersects at this moment. A milkmaid handed a bag of eggs ordered by the Dursley family today to Mrs. Dursley. She was completely unaware that the bottom of the bag contained Hogwarts admission letters, and these terrifying letters involving magic and wizards had almost made the Dursley couple mentally break down. Not long after, a thick, gasping man roared from the room. Lind could hear it clearly as a rude man angrily cursed, "These damn letters. Harry, come down, damn, go up your storage room. I mean, go up your bedroom. Dudley, go away, you also go away." Lind breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing these conversations. He was completely certain that this was the world of Harry Potter, a classic fantasy magical story. He had no intention of coming into contact with the savior at this time. Lind is now penniless and the money in his electronic account cannot be used in this era. He needs to find a place to settle down first. Lind remembered that in 1991, his doctoral supervisor Professor Zhutian lived in the South End of London. If this person existed in the world, perhaps he also lived in London. 2 days after arriving at Professor Zhutian's house, Lind was deeply surprised by the homeless man in front of him when the old scholar opened the door. "Who are you looking for?" His familiar face and authentic Far Eastern accent made Lind feel familiar. "Are you Professor Zhutian?" "I'm Lind, who came here in recognition of me." "I'm Riddenov, but not a professor." "This unfamiliar wizard, you found the wrong person." Bang! The apartment door was mercilessly slammed down, and Lind could hear a rapid murmur in Russian, complaining that the unwelcome guest had disturbed his afternoon drink. Lind was caught in a dilemma of disappointment and surprise by Riddenov's words. He arrived in London from Surrey these past few days but has suffered a lot. In terms of personal image, he can already rely on a paper cup to beg on the roadside. When it seems like the willows are dark and the flowers are bright, Zhutian, whom he had high hopes for, gave him a solid and closed door. But from Zhutian's words, Lind was pleasantly surprised to find that he seemed to have become a wizard with magical powers. This joy and sorrow made Lind sit silently on the bench by the street for a long time. After a while, as the sky grew darker, an old man in a peculiar attire came to the end of the street. Anyone who saw him would be immediately attracted by his silver long beard and hair. This person was tall and thin, wearing a wizard's robe and a purple cloak that dragged down to the ground. He is Albus Dumbledore, the greatest wizard of his time, the principal of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and the owner of a series of honorary titles. When Dumbledore passed by Lind, he threw a friendly inquiry at the confused young man. "Why is this unfamiliar wizard sitting here alone? Did he come to visit Mr. Zhutian? His temper is well known, and even an elderly person like me cannot receive more respect." Lind lifted his head, feeling somewhat surprised and at a loss, but soon calmed down. "Good day, Professor Dumbledore, it's an honor to meet you. As you can see, I'm a homeless wandering wizard. I'm penniless and don't have a wand, so I have to wait to die on the street." Dumbledore seemed to have been moved by this tragic experience, and a kind warmth flashed in his deep blue eyes hidden behind his half-moon-shaped glasses. He said softly, "If that's the case, do I have the honor of having dinner with you?" "That would be great, thank you generously. New books require follow-up reading, which is really important for the author. Thank you all." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Express Delivery of Admission Notice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Express Delivery of Admission Notice Broken Cauldron Bar. Lind stuffed the last piece of salami into his mouth and ate it until his stomach bulged. He fully understood how the generous homeless people in O. Henry's novels treated the sudden and sumptuous meal, which must be enjoyed as their last meal in life. "To be honest, Professor Dumbledore, I urgently need a job that can support myself now." "No, young man, you shouldn't be looking for a job at your age, but going to school." "What?" Lind was taken aback. "How long has it been since you've seen your own face?" A dusty child. Across the dining table, Professor Dumbledore put down his shiny silver knife and fork and took out a magic wand. 15 inches long, made of elderberry. From under his robe, waving it at Lind. "Clean up a new one." A small whirlwind blew through Lind's body, and the mud, dust, stains, sweat, and grime adhering to his skin, hair, and clothes disappeared completely. Lind looked at his exceptionally young and childish face with the mirror of his fork, and others would only think that he was at most 16 years old, still a teenager. How could it be? "Oh, okay. I understand now." Linda, who was exhausted, realized that what happened to him was not just a sudden wizard talent, but also a gradual recovery of his body to its youthful state. He has been sleeping and sleeping outdoors these days, and he also needs to avoid the police's unfounded search. He is really anxious, no wonder he didn't notice any abnormality in his body. Dumbledore smiled and said, "That's right, that's exactly what a child should do. Do a good job as a student, and leave the rest of the difficulties to adults to worry about. It's too early for you to take over the work of this world. But I don't have any tuition fees or admission notices from the school. Don't worry, your admission letter is here." Dumbledore, like the wise old man in all fairy tales who can fulfill a child's wishes, took out a light yellow letter from his sleeve. Although Lind is already quite old and has been rolling in the wind, frost, rain, and snow for a long time, when he saw this letter, he was still moved by the warm kindness. If it were his roommate here, he would be so excited that he would faint when he receives this letter. This is a pale yellow parchment envelope with emerald green ink writing on it. "South London at the doorstep of the Wizard's house in Riddenov Mr. de Lynn, please accept it." Opening the envelope, inside was a Hogwarts admission letter. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Principal. Albus Dumbledore, Medal of Merin, Chief Wizardry of the Great Wizards Association, President of the International Federation of Wizards, dear Mr. de Lynn, we are pleased to inform you that you have been granted permission to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find attached a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st, Professor Dumbledore will soon meet with you to handle your transfer business. Vice Principal, Female, dear Maliva McGonagall. Lind pursed his lips and said, "This is very important to me, really." "Thank you, Professor Dumbledore. 2 days ago, your name appeared on the admission letter, and it was obvious that your age was no longer suitable for entering first grade. I think it would be a suitable choice to arrange you as a transfer student in 5th grade. There were not many precedents for Hogwarts transfer students, but they were ultimately proven to be great wizards. I remember there was one in the last century. Well, at that time, the school principal was still Mr. Phineas." Lind felt a little embarrassed. "But to be honest, I know nothing about magic. Even the basic knowledge of new students is a problem. You can choose to listen in classrooms of different grades. Hogwarts will not reject a child with wizard talent due to ignorance. Our mission is to spread wisdom, rather than using it as a wall to shut people out. Dumbledore's generous and warm attitude undoubtedly comforted Lin Zhao. "Thank you, Professor. I will definitely enroll on time. Rest early tonight, Mr. De Lin. You must be very tired. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, a respected professor will take you to Diagon Alley to purchase essential supplies. Don't worry about expenses, this part of the expenses will be borne by the school. So I will carry 12 points of respect and look forward to the professor's grand visit. Good night, Professor Dumbledore." Lin spent a peaceful night in the guest room of the Broken Cauldron Bar. The next day, he woke up early and waited in the lobby of the bar on the first floor for the respected professor mentioned by Dumbledore. Who could it be? Can it be Professor Mileva McGonagall? Vice President Hogwarts, Dean of Gryffindor College, Master of Metamorphosis, Animagus, a serious, rigid, and loving old witch. If it were her, Lind would definitely receive proper care. Can it be Professor Felius Flavi? Dean Ravenclaw, curse teacher, champion of the wizardry dueling competition, a small wizard with fairy bloodline, gentle and humorous, emotionally rich, and deserving of being a good teacher and friend. If it weren't for them, would it be Professor Pomona Sprout who is optimistic and empathetic? Or the cold but affectionate Professor Severus Snape? Anyone is good, as long as it's not Quirina's Quirrell. This person has been possessed by Voldemort's residual soul and is now a completely dangerous figure. Then Lind waited for Professor Quirrell to arrive. De Lin. I'm sorry, you're called that name, right? I'm a professor at Hogwarts. Just call me Quirrell, Dumbledore sent me over. He said you were at the Broken Cauldron Bar. Quirrell is a young wizard with a pale face, tense expression, stuttering speech, and often involuntarily trembling in his body. Lin Zhao noticed his strange purple headscarf, emitting a faint pungent odor, like an Indian headscarf soaked in masala. "Hello, respected Professor Quirrell, it's an honor to meet you." They chatted here, and not long after, two guests arrived at the entrance of the bar. One of them was exceptionally tall, with thick and disheveled hair, and was a mixed-race giant. The other was a thin and small boy, wearing a pair of worn-out round-framed glasses and beautiful green eyes. A lightning-like scar could be faintly seen on the forehead under the fluffy bangs. The Broken Cauldron Bar became lively with the arrival of these two people. The originally bored drinkers all approached to greet each other. That mixed-race giant is the key keeper and gamekeeper of Hogwarts, named Hagrid. And that skinny little boy is the famous savior of the wizarding world, Harry Potter. Quirrell also joined in to shake hands with Harry, but soon he left, citing the need to take Lind to school. Lind remained silent about this, and Quirrell became Voldemort's servant. Voldemort hated Harry, the boy who had killed him, to the bone. Smart people should not ask questions, as it is beneficial for longevity. When Quirrell approached to meet his ignorant enemy, Lind took a moment to glance at the door mark on the back of his hand. World I arrived, World 2. Countdown 6.12, in 6 hours, he will be able to shuttle to the next world, which is this evening. Quirrell led Lind into Diagon Alley, with the entrance located in the alley behind the bar, and Hagrid and Harry's destination was also here. Quirrell tries to avoid both sides walking together as much as possible. He first took Lind to Ollivander's wand shop. Wands are the life of wizards. It can be said that wizards who possess wands are the masters of the wizarding world. They are an important medium for casting spells and an amplifier of wizard magic. Without them, even the most basic spell becomes difficult, and casting without a wand requires extra effort, and some effort is not pleasing. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Portal to the Outer Realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Portal to the Outer Realm. After delivering Lind to the store, Quirrell suddenly made an excuse that he needed to go to the fairy bank to withdraw money and let Lind go in alone to pick out his wand. He would be back soon. Lind immediately agreed, and they were both very polite to each other, never inquiring about each other's private matters, and maintaining a friendly atmosphere together. Ollivander is a quiet old wizard with silver eyes and a good memory. He remembers every wizard who bought a wand in the store and their wands, but he has never seen Lind. Oh, a new guest, it's really strange. Are you from the east? Everything is okay, sir. What's wrong with your wand? Do you need my help to take a look? To be honest, I came to choose a wand. When it came to wand business, Ollivander became enthusiastic. He took out a magic tape measure and asked, "May I ask which hand is your favorite?" "Right hand, sir." The magic tape measure flew from Ollivander's hand and automatically measured Lind's arm span, shoulder height, and head circumference. The old shop owner began to boast, "Every Ollivander wand has a super powerful magical substance. Unicorn fur, phoenix tail feathers, and dragon nerves. Each Ollivander wand is unique because there are no two identical unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes. I've heard that a wand is like a person, it selects wizards." Absolutely right. Ollivander praised Lind in a tone of appreciation. The shopkeeper pulled out a box from the high shelf and said, "Let's try this one. Poplar wood and dragon heartstrings, 9 inches long, very tough." After Lind tried to wave it, a white flash shot out from the tip of the wand. Ollivander was surprised but hesitated. After some thought, he finally took it back from Lind's hand and replaced it with a wand. "Goose-eared oak and unicorn mane, 11¼ inches, try this one." Just like last time, the new wand immediately triggered a magical reaction in Lind's hand, this time spitting out a cold mist like milk. Ollivander frowned and said, "It's strange, it's really strange." "Wait, try this. Cypress dragon heartstring again." Next, Lind tried almost all the wands in the store, and they all resonated with his magic. This was unbelievable to Ollivander, as the wands were too tame and cold. Even the mischievous ones made of dogwood were well behaved in Lind's hands. "What a picky customer," Ollivander said. "They are all willing to accept you, but they don't like you. Perhaps you won't be able to find the love of this life with me." Lind didn't care much about this statement. In the end, he picked the wand made of cypress and spent 7 gallons. Ollivander continued to mutter, he really felt that Lind's situation was very special. Before he left, the wand master warned, "Young man, I still believe that there is a wand that truly belongs to you waiting for you in the world. Perhaps fate will guide you to find it." "Thank you very much, sir." After Lind walked out of the Ollivander wand shop, Professor Quirrell suddenly appeared from the street corner. He stuttered and said, "Are you all okay? Let's go to the next stop, come with me." As a wizard apprentice, some tools and clothing are indispensable. Work robe, pointed hat, dragon leather gloves, cloak, wand, crucible, medicine bottle, telescope, balance. Also, Lind needs the textbooks for this year. Considering his special situation, we have purchased all the books needed for grades 1 to 5. That's a thick stack, and in order to fit them, Lind needs 2 large suitcases. The last thing that needs to be purchased is the owl, which is a messenger and postman in the magical world. It is not necessary for Hogwarts students. Lind followed the local customs and also chose a beautiful female snow owl, named Kaya. Before parting ways with Professor Quirrell, this poor man possessed by Voldemort gave Lind 10 gold crowns, which was enough for Lind to stay at the Broken Cauldron until the start of school. "Goodbye, Professor Quirrell." Quirrell's pale face flickered with a strange expression, a little melancholy, a milliliter of sadness, a few cups of sourness and tons of numbness. That was the gaze of all the poor people who had been shattered by life's last trace of pain, looking back at their golden youth. He waved to Lind and stumbled towards the streets of London. Returning to the guest room of the Broken Cauldron bar, Lind eagerly retrieved his newly purchased magic book. Standard Spell, Beginner, by Miranda Gosshack. The fluttering and gorgeous font on the cover seemed to be even more pressing than a gold nugget, and Lind held the classics of knowledge, with infinite satisfaction surging in his chest. He knew he was about to embark on the path of pursuing magical power, and the scenery along the way was bizarre and unimaginable for himself, who used to be a muggle. Is there anything more trustworthy for a wandering person in a foreign world than the power in their hands? I'm afraid it's difficult to have it. Due to his emotional excitement, Lind gently touched the book cover, allowing the thick and delicate parchment to gradually calm his mind until his breath calmed down. Finally, he opened the pages of the book. The editor of The Standard Spell begins by warning readers and learners of the precautions to take when using magic, including spells, gestures, and unwavering confidence. No omissions are allowed. Beginners should start learning simple magic. Lind read carefully, word for word, and then flipped over to the first spell. Fluorescent Flicker. The book page depicts the movement of waving a wand, indicating the light and heavy tones of the spell. Lind took out the cypress wand he had bought and painted a gourd with a gourd. Fluorescent Flashing. A warm glow lit up from the tip of the staff. Lind only felt it glaring for a moment, almost making his eyes sour. I am now a wizard. Owl Kaya was barking in the cage, as if feeling happy for him. Throughout the afternoon, Lind spent his time learning spells. He was proficient in basic spells, but truly profound magic was not so easy, such as metamorphosis. Lind tried to turn a wooden thorn into a needle 6 times before succeeding, which made his excitement suddenly calm down. It seems that I'm not a genius. So, hard work can make up for my shortcomings. After casting spells continuously for 3 hours, Lind felt genuinely tired and decided to take a break. He looked at the newly purchased wizard robe at hand, prepared to take a shower, and changed into a new outfit. Since crossing over, his pajamas seem to have grown on him, and he hasn't changed them in so many days. Clothes are a symbol of status, and as a wizard, it's time for him to change into a wizard's robe and cloak. Saying it's taking a shower is actually casting a spell. Clean up. A cool breeze blew out from the wand, sweeping across the body in an instant, wiping away dirt. This bathing method is so simple, it's simply a blessing for lazy people. Lind took off his pajamas and earlier, a plastic fork fell out of his robe pocket. Ha! Lind picked up the fork in surprise. Why didn't I throw it away? He walked to the small trash can in the corner of the room and was about to throw away his fork when it suddenly began to shine. Lind was surprised to find that the plastic fork in his hand gave him a feeling of being like fingers and arms. What's going on? He held this glowing fork and cast a few spells, but surprisingly, it was even more useful than the wand he bought in the store. Lind tried to use his shape-shifting technique, and the plastic fork suddenly stretched into an 11-inch wand, which was extremely obedient. Is this the wand that was destined for me? Lind couldn't help but laugh and cry, and at the same time, he thought to himself that this fork had followed him through time. Perhaps something had happened, just like himself, not only becoming young, but also becoming a wizard. Since that's the case, the pajamas and phone on his body may have also changed. If he were to throw them away without knowing, the losses would be huge. Is that Luossifen also useful? Unfortunately. Linda sighed. At this moment, his heart suddenly jumped and he instinctively looked at the mark on the back of his hand. World 2. Countdown midnight, already on. Lind's heart was filled with joy, and his golden finger had changed. But how should we use it? He thought for a moment, and the door-shaped mark on the back of his hand suddenly emitted a faint blue light, illuminating the bedroom door. The plain and dilapidated wooden door suddenly turned into a blue frame in Linda's eyes. Inside the frame was a beautiful natural landscape, illuminated by the radiance from World 2. This is a portal. Lind waved his hand and the blue glow attached to the door frame shot back, returning to the door mark. He tried repeatedly until he became proficient. In the following days, he conducted multiple experiments on the portal and summarized several experiences. Firstly, the portal allows live creatures to pass through and is bidirectional, which may mean that in the future, Lind can take others across the world. Secondly, the opening and closing of the portal are controlled by Lind, with an unlimited opening time, but the size of the portal is fixed, with a rectangular contour of 2.13 meters in length and 1.5 meters in width. Thirdly, the portal must be attached to a physical object in order to open. Finally, the time flow of the worlds on both sides of the portal is not always synchronized. When the portal is opened, the time on both sides passes synchronously. However, when the portal is closed, regardless of how long it takes for Lin's world to pass, the time in the opposite world remains at the moment when the portal is closed. After careful experimentation, Lin finally decided to personally step into the back of the portal and explore the truth. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. How the Old Man Scrolls the Bar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. How the Old Man Scrolls the Bar. In the year 4E200, at the northern end of the continent of Tamriel, the Empire of the Medes, Skyline Province. The sun is warm in Shimu town during the rainy month of April. The stream is gurgling, and the sawmill's water wheel is creaking and spinning. The blacksmith's stove lit up thick smoke, and the foraging hens took a walk on the street. The riverside grass is long and the birds are flying, butterflies are dancing in the bushes, wild thistles, lilacs, and pansies are flourishing, and the scenery of the primitive countryside is fascinating. The climate of Tianji province is distinct in 4 seasons, and the temperature in early summer is already very warm. Residents walked out of their sturdy and reliable wooden houses, engaged in labor, and enjoyed the sunshine. That morning, a guest from a foreign land came to the peaceful town. He was dressed in a wizard's robe, draped in a pitch-black cloak, and on his shoulder stood a white owl looking around. The Nord guards on the street cast a cautious gaze at him, and Lind dressed like a wizard, while the Sky Province did not welcome wizards. Shortly after passing through the portal, Lind knew what was happening in World 2 he was in. This is the world of the game Elder Scrolls, and the place where he lands is a deserted cottage located in the central part of the Snowman territory in Skyline Province. The world background of The Elder Scrolls is a well-designed high demon with a strong mythological color. However, the combat effectiveness is usually not too exaggerated, and there is no outrageous performance where just a passerby can explode on the street. The overall civilization background is still in a relatively primitive era of cold weapons. He spent half a day exploring his surroundings and unknowingly arrived at Shimu town. The guards at the entrance of the town stopped Lind. "Outsider, what are you doing here for? Are you passing by or looking for someone?" The language used by these Nords is similar to Old English, and Lind undoubtedly needs some time to learn and adapt. He could only show a helpless expression to the guard immediately, pointing to his own mouth. "Oh, you're a mute. Can you understand what I'm saying?" Lind nodded and shook his head, meaning he didn't quite understand. The young Nord guards were patient and vigilant, not only because Lind dressed like a wizard, but also because the sky was not peaceful during this period. The people of Shimu town spontaneously organized a militia team with the aim of preventing outsiders from causing trouble. After listening for a while, Lind suddenly asked, "Balgauf." The guard was taken aback and said, "Can you speak? Who is Lord Balgauf of yours?" "Balgauf." Lind asked again. "All right, what exactly are you trying to say?" Lind had already vaguely guessed the timeline he was on, which should be Elder Scrolls V. Skyline. At this time, the Skyline province is experiencing a civil war, and soon after, the giant dragons sleeping in this ancient land will awaken one after another. Their leader, the world devourer Zhutian, returns from exile and will once again rule over the sky and earth, enslaving all life. It can be described as a magnificent epic stage. Zhutian. Lind asked again. The guard looked puzzled and shook his head at Lind. "Okay, it seems that the plot hasn't started yet. Zhutian hasn't attacked the holy town, also known as Helgen, yet, and our protagonist, Ryumi, hasn't appeared yet." Lind touched his stomach, indicating that he was very hungry, and then pressed his hands against his cheeks, tilting his head to make a pillow and sleeping, indicating that he needed a place to rest. The Nords, who have lived in the Skyline province for generations, are a warm and hospitable race with a fierce style. They generally have blonde hair, navy blue eyes, pale skin, tall stature, and are hardworking and extremely cold resistant. If you make friends with them with a friendly mindset, they will never make you hungry, which is completely different from the British in World Eye. The guards allowed Lind to pass because of his poor appearance, but they didn't trust him to wander alone in the town, so they followed him all the way. Lind didn't act recklessly, he visited the Sleeping Giant Hotel at the northern end of the town. He sat in the lobby all day, ordering nothing and quietly listening to the guests chatting. The minstrel plays the lute, sings ancient poetry, and listens with a smile. Others will be curious about his appearance, as well as the owl perched on his shoulder. The guard who followed Lind explained for him, "Oh, this person doesn't quite understand what we're saying." Lind would applaud the bard, and when someone asked him a question, he either showed a puzzled expression or pointed to his own mouth. The guard was convinced by his calm demeanor and let go of his doubts. He took the initiative to buy 2 bottles of honey wine at the counter and started drinking with Lind. Half a bottle of honey wine was drunk, and the guard let out a hiccup and said with a smile, "Oh, thank you, young man, for giving me a rare vacation." Lind showed him a puzzled and innocent expression. The little guard laughed heartily. Their lunch was also hosted by the guards. In the afternoon, the guards led Lind on a tour of the town and introduced him to the villagers. In the evening, Lind waved goodbye to them and returned to the abandoned cabin where he had arrived. He didn't stay overnight here, and the nights in the Sky Province were not peaceful. Not to mention the wandering beasts, wolves, bears, trolls, as well as robbers, vampires, and werewolves. Those who can survive alone in the wilderness are not simple. They are either reclusive mages or highly skilled warriors. Lind returned to World Eye. The Broken Cauldron bar to take a nap, then teleported over and survived the long night with fluorescent spells and textbooks. At that time, Lind was unaware that, as he repeatedly opened the portal, a ship had already set sail on the island of Sazum to the east of the continent of Tamriel. The passengers on the ship were dressed in strange religious robes, with evil masks resembling multi-legged starfish on their faces. They gathered in the dark cabin, murmuring the revered name of the knowledge demon god Hermias Mora and another name. The outsider Lind. Find him, dig out his secrets, for Mirak. No, for the great Mora. For over a month afterwards, Linda visited Shimu town every day. Sometimes he comes early in the morning, and sometimes he only arrives after noon. There aren't many residents in Shimu town, and everyone has gradually become accustomed to this hotel's frequent guests. He always sits at the Sleeping Giant Inn until the evening, quietly listening to everyone talking. Slowly, he began to try to communicate with the townspeople, and he could also stutter out some conversations from his mouth. Lind was immediately surrounded by curious Nords. The most concerning question for everyone is whether Lind is actually a wizard. Lind's answer to this was very implicit: "I'm just a beginner." At everyone's request, Lind had to perform some magic from the world of Harry Potter. The simplest spells, such as fluorescent flicker, floating spell, clear water like a spring, and very basic item transformation techniques, he waved a cypress wand and turned a tin wine glass into a piece of bread. The drunken guard grabbed the bread and bit it, but let out a cry of "ouch." He spat out the bread and said, "With the 9 holy spirits up, this thing is really disgusting." Although it turned into the shape of bread, it was actually the same wine glass. Lind nodded with a smile, and everyone in the tavern burst into laughter. The air was filled with cheerful voices. On a day in the following month of May, a group of pagan priests dressed in very strange clothes came to Shimu town. They were dressed in long robes and wore wooden masks resembling octopuses on their faces. They asked everyone if there was a black-robed mage here, with black hair and a bird standing on their shoulders. Lind happened to come from the town entrance, and when he saw this group of pagan priests, he immediately realized that they were Mirac believers from the island of Sawsum. In the game, these believers are specifically looking for trouble with the protagonist, the dragon race. They obey the original dragon race Mirac, who is a servant of the demon god Hermias Mora. In summary, the appearance of these people represents trouble coming to their doorstep. He's there. Lind saw the group of pagans drawing out daggers, and then they all committed suicide together, spraying blood on the peaceful streets of Shimu town. The scene made people shudder with fear. Without waiting for him to react, the clear sky in Shimu town suddenly turned into an evil and gloomy dark green. A loud, deep, and lazy voice rang in the ears of ordinary people. At the moment of hearing it, everyone in Shimu town, except for Lind, fell into a forced fainting. The cold, damp and smelly wind fell from the sky like a corpse. Linda was shocked by an unspeakable terror, and his nervous system was completely at a standstill. He raised his head like dust and looked up at the mountains. He could only watch the void being disturbed by a dark, greasy whisker, and a thick ink-like vortex spread over the street. From the deep annihilation, he opened countless silly, turbid yellow-green eyes like foam. Hundreds of dark whiskers stretched out from the center of the vortex, swimming and convulsing in front of Linda. The strange and eerie object presented before Lind was recognized by Lind. It was he, the magnificent Hermias Mora, the demon god of the ancient scroll world, the ruler of Daedra who resided in the realm of annihilation, known as the King of Secrets and the Guardian of Forbidden Knowledge, a deity who was extremely curious about all secrets. Ordinary people from a foreign land, we have finally met. It seems that Mirac's foolish followers are not too hopeless. So now, it is up to you to tell me where you come from and how you silently crossed the oblivion to reach the mortal realm of Mengdas. Lin's heart was icy cold. At this moment, the door-shaped mark on the back of his hand began to flicker, a light that was not seen by others, but was caught by Hermias's full gaze. He smiled contentedly. "Ah, very good, very honest, offer your secret, and I will allow your service to become my loyal servant." Hermias's tentacles lightly touched the imprint on the back of Lin's hand. Immediately, the door turned into a vortex and engulfed Hermias. The magnificent demon god let out a scream of terror, and his infinite eyes were simultaneously covered by the terrifying bright blue. The surface of his countless tentacles opened blue doors, like a barnacle at the bottom of a ship, like blooming flower buds. The large and small blue doors piled up and overlapped, squeezing each other. There were also doors inside, with endless depths. They spewed out waves of wild blue, dispelling the green clouds above Shimu town. The body of the demon god is parasitized by an infinite gate, like a mineral crystal, with sharp edges and beautiful yet terrifying forms. In his terror, Hermias discovered that he was disappearing. For a ruler of Daedra, death was an unattainable concept, but the great he now faced death in reality. This death was not transformed into a corpse, but was swallowed up, from power to form, to the realm of the demon god. His consciousness, his past and future were all being devoured by that terrifying portal mark. "No. I won't. Disappear here." Hermias Mora could no longer speak in a warm and lazy tone. He screamed in agony, tearing himself apart, most of it stained with blue, and the remaining remnants quickly escaped back into oblivion. After devouring thousands of eyes and tentacles, the door-shaped mark flickered slightly and fell silent again. The sky in Shimu town returned to clear, and as the unconscious townspeople gradually woke up, they saw the pagans on the street who had turned into corpses, while Lind had disappeared without a trace. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. When man eats God, he becomes God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. When man eats God, he becomes God. When the residents of Shimu town began to worry about their wizard friends, Lind did not return to the Broken Cauldron bar in World I. Hermias Mora's sudden visit had a great impact on him, but the anomaly that followed also surprised him. Lind carried the unconscious owl Kaya all the way back to the abandoned house in the wilderness, and relieved his emotions by walking. This dilapidated house. It should no longer be called a dilapidated house. Lind repaired it multiple times through repair spells and transformation spells, and set up fences and traps. Now, it seems like a small and secure shelter. He also purchased a set of bedding in Harry Potter World, allowing him to lie on a soft and warm bed. Now he is sitting by the bed, fully focused on the door mark on the back of his hand. The information that flowed into the mind changed. World I, opened, World 2. Arrived, World 3. Countdown World Alpha Countdown 0.01 Worlds 1 and 2 need not be repeated. The countdown to Worlds 3 appeared after Linda arrived in the world of the Elder Scrolls, and it is still a question mark to this day. And after the portal imprint devoured Mora, a world emerged Alpha when Lind walked all the way to the wilderness cottage. The countdown was almost over. Lind stared at the doorstep imprint for an instant, and the minute was extremely long, his palms soaked in damp sweat. Countdown Midnight World Alpha opened. Lind exhaled and raised his hand to open the gateway to the World Alpha, the teleportation gate. Across from the portal, it was pitch black with no wind at all. It was just sucking the air from the cabin. Facing this profound and boundless darkness, Lind's mortal body trembled, while his soul inexplicably let out a long sigh of satisfaction. He said to the world beyond the portal, "There must be light." So a faint light lit up in the deep darkness. It's like dozens of stars in the darkness opening their eyes. The light illuminated the surrounding scenery, so Lind could also see clearly through the portal. Across from the door was an empty hexagonal corridor, with walls and floors made of a whole piece of beige marble. In the center of the corridor, there was a ventilation shaft and a low granite fence erected. The portal is attached to one of the walls, and Lind can see that the other 5 walls are all plain white, with nothing but floating light balls. The air sucked from the cabin filled the corridor, and the wind stopped as a result. Lind cautiously stepped over the portal and truly stepped into this strange alpha world. Standing on the clean hexagonal corridor, he looked towards the ventilation shaft, where it was pitch black with no reflection, like the world's texture was missing, a pure void of darkness. Unlike other places, the world Alpha to give Lind an unusually comfortable feeling, he almost felt a warm joy of returning home in his heart, and this suspicious joy made him secretly alert. As seen across from the portal, there is nothing in the corridor. Lind noticed the floating light balls around him, so he said, "Turn off the lights." The light sphere dimmed at the same time, and the photons trapped in the room fled wildly, eventually slipping away from the ventilation shaft. There should be light. The light ball once again faithfully manifests itself. Lind uses God's actions in Genesis to inspire him to understand this world Alpha. I have gained a considerable level of mastery. He had already vaguely guessed where this was. This starts with Hermias Mora, who was devoured by the portal imprint. Hermias Mora, as a great deity in the setting of the Elder Scrolls series, resides on the Annihilation plane outside the mortal realm like the other 15 Daedra monarchs. Together with them, they create kingdoms belonging to the demon gods, or Annihilation realms, just like heaven, which is the world where God and believers live. After devouring most of the power of Hermias Mora, the portal imprint shaped the world Alpha. This is Lind's country, his realm of annihilation. A microcosm belonging to Lind. After understanding this fact, Linda's original fear disappeared. First, he gazed at the mark on the back of his hand with fascinated and surprised eyes. Then he sincerely thanked Mora for the rocket awarded by Old Iron. The generous monarch Daedra made the young wizard who had just started his career suddenly become a man with a house. It is not too much to praise him as a big brother. Although Brother Bangi is ugly and has ulterior motives, he has given so much. Weak Mora. In a coma Linda. If you don't give up, Da is willing to worship as your adoptive father. JPG Lind looks around the world Alpha. The layout of a hexagonal corridor with ventilation shafts immediately reminded him of a novel. Jorge Luis Borges from Argentina wrote the short story, The Library of the Tower of Heaven, in 1944. The library depicted in the novel is a hexagonal layout with endless corridors, and each corridor is filled with bookshelves. The Zhutian Tower Library is actually a metaphor, referring to the universe itself, depicting its grand, infinite, and eternal beauty. Lin's World Alpha. It is a small universe, a small library of the Zhutian Tower, and he thinks this metaphor is really clever. Hermes Morben is the god of knowledge, and his kingdom is a library that hides infinite mysteries. The universe created by devouring his power is also a library. From today on, Lind will be the administrator of this library, and this library will be his realm of annihilation, his country. Lind decided to name this world the Library Tower. Nowadays, this place is still empty, but one day, it will become the paradise that all seekers of knowledge aspire to. When Lind returned to the wilderness cabin, his pet owl woke up. The poor little pet buried its head in its wings and let out a mournful growl. Lind spent a lot of patience calming it down. As a magical owl, it is born to witness those fantastic and exciting landscapes, but facing a foreign demon god is still too exciting. Lind was somewhat worried about Kaya and the people of Shimu town. Hermes Mora was forcibly born, although he could only exert a very weak power in the mortal world, his influence may be far-reaching, like the smoke and dust of nuclear radiation, remaining on the earth for hundreds of years, bringing unknown lesions to the locals. In order to examine Kaya's body, Lind took it into the library tower, where Lind was the true god, his gaze almost omniscient. And the result confirmed Lind's concern. Kaya's soul harbored the aura of Mora, and those faint pathological factors were like yellow-green dull eyeballs, very hidden, limited in scale compared to water molecules, and fell into a dormant state, making it even more difficult to capture. Lind ordered these heterogeneity to leave, so they fell off Kaya and floated in the air of the library tower. These strange factors derived from demons are valuable research materials, and storing them in a library tower is a good way to store them. Next, it's time to check the health of the villagers in Shimu town. Lind won't let them be inexplicably implicated like this, so even if it's troublesome, compensation must be made. Besides, he can also take this opportunity to collect more demonic aura. As his career is just starting, he needs to save up a bit of everything. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Dining at the Banquet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Dining at the Banquet. Lind. People are in a different world and have just become demons. Now they need to make a guest appearance as village doctors. How can we make the villagers believe that they are sick? Online, etc. Lind considered the problem he was currently facing, and his goal was to invite the villagers of Shimu town to the library tower and expel the remaining influence of Mora. This process is like promoting health products to the elderly. Nordic people generally have a cautious mentality towards the spellcasters, and if they want to be obedient and fall into the trap, the methods must be clever. The routines of various TV famous doctors in the 21st century are enough for Linda to learn from. The most crucial thing is one word. Deception. After a little thought, he came up with a plan. That night, Linda quietly visited Shimu town. By now, the lights and candles in every household had been extinguished, and besides the night guards patrolling, even the dogs had already rested. The collective coma incident that occurred during the day made the townspeople murmur one by one, and everyone was worried. They gathered in the tavern to discuss for an afternoon but couldn't come to any conclusions. As it was getting late and the tavern closed, the captain of the town's guards and the lumberyard owner, Goldo, made a joint decision. Firstly, we need to report this matter to Lord Balgauf of Shuaman. He is the owner of this land and the people defending the territory. It is always right to find him when encountering difficulties. Secondly, we need to be on guard against the foreign wizard named Lind, who attracted a few heretics and then suddenly disappeared, his whereabouts being very suspicious. The guard said a few good words for Lind, but did not change everyone's decision. Lind is no longer welcomed in Shimu town. While the guard was resting at the outpost, he heard someone calling out to him. It was Lind. He let the guard come alone to the small river on the west side of the town. "It's you, are you all okay? People say you used evil magic, murdered those non-local believers, and caused us to faint. But I don't believe you would do this." Lind was still dressed in his cloak and pajamas, with a smooth and tender 16-year-old face. His eyes sparkled in the radiance of the stars and the moon. Such a sincere and gentle young man was indeed not associated with a murderer. "Clement, to be honest with you, the disaster that occurred today was an accident for both of us. I did not intend to put Shimu town in crisis. Those people were ruled by the demon god Mora, causing their deaths, and the culprit behind your coma was the arrival of Mora. Shu air is up. I can't believe it. The fact is, and the problem goes beyond that." Lind told the guard about the fact of Mora's breath. This loyal, simple, and brave Nord gazed deeply at Lind, as if trying to understand him from beginning to end. Lind responded to this scrutiny with a firm and serious attitude. "Do you know what? You don't seem like a liar. I believe you once. What do you need me to do now? The promise of the Nordic people is very heavy. The people of this nation have an ancient traditional belief, advocating for the brave and warriors, daring to love and hate, and being concise and straightforward. Most of them will not hesitate to sacrifice their lives for dignity and honor, and after death, their souls will return to Songard, the paradise in the Nordic faith, similar to the Hall of Heroes in Norse mythology." "That's great, it's simple. I have a magic that can dispel the influence of demons. I need you to help me persuade everyone in town to agree to let me cast the spell." "Oh, magic." The guard frowned, his expression like seeing a bunch of wet and smelly socks, and he had to deal with it, feeling disgusted in his heart. Lind felt helpless and said, "Yes, magic. I know how difficult it is to make the Nords trust magic. So I won't put you in a difficult position. You just need to tell everyone that this morning's accident has nothing to do with me. I will prepare a banquet in my own cabin and send an invitation tomorrow. When the time comes, you can persuade everyone to come." "Okay, but I can't guarantee it. Guests attending the banquet not only have free food and drinks, but also receive a dozen fresh eggs as a gift." The little guard's eyes lit up and he immediately became very suspicious. "But you're so poor, how can you afford it? It's not like turning stones into bread to deceive people, is it?" Lind waved his hand and confidently said, "Don't worry, I have enough time to prepare for this banquet. Clement, remember to explain to everyone that you can give eggs to the banquet. Oh, if you have a dog at home, you can also bring them, and if the dog comes, you can also give eggs." Farewell to the kind guard boy, Lind returned to his own cabin. Shimu town has a very small scale and a short history, with only a few generations. Initially, it was the ancestors of Gordo who took a liking to this land nestled by mountains and rivers. They built a hydraulic sawmill by the river and then continuously recruited workers, from blacksmiths who repaired logging tools to farmers who cultivated the land. Merchants who bought and sold miscellaneous goods also settled here, gradually forming a small village. Until now, the population of Shimu town is less than 200, and it's almost like buying a rural banquet. It doesn't cost much money, and you can buy all the materials for a few £100s. Lind is still penniless, with only 20 crowns all over his body. He thought of using the transformation curse to turn stones into gold, and I believe all wizards have thought of it this way, but few have succeeded. In the world of Harry Potter, the Philosopher's Stone created by the great alchemist Nicole Lemmy has the ability to convert metal into gold, which is regarded as the highest achievement that is difficult to replicate. In the world of Elder Scrolls, there is also a special transformation spell that can transform ordinary ores into gold. Lind doesn't need to make magic stones, nor does he need to learn transformation spells anymore. He picked up a few pebbles by the river and brought them into the library tower. He waved his instant noodle fork and they turned into pure gold. This is real gold that cannot be dispelled by the anti-transformation curse, and all its properties are consistent with natural gold. Lin's power in the library tower is so incredible. A god in his kingdom, as long as there is enough energy support, can do anything, and creating things out of thin air is also very ordinary. He could actually turn these pebbles into sausages, bacon, and bread, but on the one hand, it was time-consuming and laborious. Turning a bean-sized piece of gold was enough for him to buy all the ingredients. On the other hand, the food he transformed could only mimic the taste in his memory, and it might taste average. With gold, Lind returned to World Eye for procurement. He first went to the Gringotts Ferry Bank in Diagon Alley to open an account. These ferries don't check their accounts, as long as they have money, they are high-quality customers. The counter of Guling Pavilion is always busy, with hundreds of ferries sitting on high stools behind the counter, dressed in neat suits and uniforms, dressed neatly and with a more or less imposing expression. This character, like those financial speculators in London, is both greedy, lowly, and self-proclaimed wise. Hello. The bespectacled fairy lowered her head to copy the ledger, lifted her eyelids and glanced at Lind. Before he could hear a cold and indifferent greeting from his arrogant and withered lips, the golden radiance in front of her immediately filled the corners of his mouth with a humble smile. Oh, hello, hello. Dear customer, may I help you? Exchange money, by the way, will your bank accept the client's commission? The remuneration can be negotiated. Lind took out a piece of gold from an open sack and gently pushed it to the fairy. His hooked eyes slid along the gold nugget with a thud, which was the sound of saliva swallowing his stomach and the sound of his conscience being stolen. Of course, the customer's orders are the consistent creed of our business. Lhuan, come and take my place. Lhuan is the name of another fairy. Lind exchanged 1,000 crowns at Gringotts, opened a personal vault, and entrusted fairies to purchase banquet ingredients for him. A wealthy life is indeed very different. Who would have thought that when Lind first arrived in a different world, he needed to walk from Surrey to London on foot, just to seek refuge with a friend he had never met before. In the blink of an eye, he became a demigod. So, thanks to Dumbledore for the timely rain and the rockets from Mora's old iron, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Dining at a Banquet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Dining at a banquet. After receiving the ingredients, Lind needed to spend a day preparing for the banquet, turning the library tower into a magical kitchen. When Lind was studying abroad in London before, he often relied on himself. The conditions in student dormitories were limited, and smoke alarms were installed, making it inconvenient to cook dishes with cooking fumes. At that time, Lind learned from his roommate how to make foreign dishes, mainly salads and various sauces. There were not many places where cooking skills were needed, because the vast majority of them were industrial pre-made dishes, various canned foods, especially stewed beans, which were considered national-level home-cooked dishes that Lind couldn't bear to eat. When he worked in a restaurant, he learned to make famous British dishes, such as fish and chips, with various sauces, and grilled cheese. It was delicious, but also greasy. Later on, he met several fellow villagers and together they went to Asian supermarkets to buy ingredients. In the apartment they rented, they could cook Chinese cuisine, which was a nostalgic taste. This meal is prepared for the people of Shimu town. Skyline Province has a long history and was the first settlement of humans after migrating to the continent of Tamriel, but such a long history seems to have not been reflected in their culinary culture. Their diet is similar to that of the people of medieval Europa, with bread as their staple food, accompanied by a pot of mixed vegetables stewed in soup. The common tableware is a long-handled spoon, because the ingredients in the stewed soup are all small pieces that are rotten and do not require knives and forks. The dining tables of aristocrats and wealthy people will be more sumptuous. In addition to the rich and flavorful stew, there will also be large pieces of grilled meat, grilled fish, vegetables such as grilled chives, cheese is essential, and desserts such as donuts, dried beets, and persimmon cakes. In terms of dining format, there is no strict order of appetizers, main dishes, and desserts. More often than not, it is like a buffet, with dishes arranged in a straight line and guests taking whatever they want. Lind specifically bought several Italian and French recipes, but didn't buy any British recipes. Those things are so annoying as toilet paper that even locals don't like them. You should know that the best restaurants in London serve French cuisine. In the library tower, Lind has an omniscient eye and his ability to absorb knowledge has been greatly enhanced. He can easily understand the recipes he bought, and he also has a culinary foundation, so this meal was cooked very well. There must be music. Lind waved his hand and the library tower played a soothing symphony. He pointed to the flour bag and said, "Take yourself apart and put it in a basin." The ceiling thread of 20 flour bags escaped like a thin snake, and the open pockets were like volcanoes, spewing out white high-gluten wheat flour like a small cloud, drifting into a large stainless steel basin on the side. Lind pulled out his cypress wand and said, "Clear water is like a spring." Clean water poured into the basin, swirling and stirring the flour. Yeast powder flies. Salt flies. The humidity and salinity were just right, and the dough began to ferment. Lind instructed the bacon and beef and mutton to hit the knife and cut them into pieces. The flames are raging. Bang, a flame ignited, and more than 10 large pots were heated simultaneously, frying and frying were carried out simultaneously. Food is dancing. The scene is both eerie and magical. A yellow roasted chicken stuffed apples, garlic, and onions into its stomach, then jumped out of the oven halfway through, raised a honey brush to bathe itself, soaked its whole body, and quickly walked back to the grill until the skin became golden and crispy. Tomatoes, kale, and carrots are pushed and rolled under the kitchen knife, sliced and then jumped into the salad bowl, jumping like live fish in the vinegar salad dressing. Egg whirlwind was blown by a magical whirlwind, causing it to spin like a spinning top. Eggs jumped onto egg whirlwind's handle one by one, breaking themselves. Egg shells sat on the edge of the bowl, laughing as the egg white and egg yolk brothers fell into the vortex. Garlic and rosemary lie in hot oil, and after one side of the thick-cut steak is fried into a beautiful layer of coating, it slowly sits up on its own, flipping over in the pot. The pan tilts to the side, allowing the hot oil to accumulate along the edge of the pot into a small lake. The hot oil soaked in spices drips onto the beef steak like a waterfall flowing backwards. No matter how clever a chef is, he cannot take care of so many pots at the same time, but magic is just that. Skilled housewives in the wizarding world all have this skill, and Lind's operation is considered to follow the local customs. He also uses this process to exercise his casting ability. As soon as the food was ready, Lind quickly sent an invitation letter to Shimu town. The young guard went door to door with invitation letters to persuade everyone. They heard that there was no limit to alcohol and eggs were also given as gifts. The originally wary group gathered their spirits and came happily. Nordic people still attach great importance to attending banquets. Both men and women should dress up, change into neat clothes and boots, trim their beards, tie their hair, and avoid being messy. Lind used a shape-shifting spell to make 10 long tables and 200 round stools in the open space outside the cabin. A long table was formed in a circle, and a stone fire pit was built in the middle. The raging bonfire burned, and he put 2 sheep on a rack to grill. He also buried more than 30 pounds of skinned potatoes in the charcoal ash at the edge of the fire pit. People arrived at the banquet one after another, and Lind changed into a new outfit. He used magic to transform his cloak and pajamas into trendy cotton robes and stood at the dining table waving to everyone. There is such a grand banquet on this wasteland, as if it were a scene from a fairy tale fable. The table is filled with a wide variety of delicacies, including a mountain of honey roasted chicken, large ham, fried potato horns, clam cream soup, vegetable salad. There are also beer and wine stored in dozens of large wooden barrels, scattered candies, chocolate, vanilla ice cream, and main course buns stacked high in baskets. The people of Shimu town were all amazed, and they looked at Linda with new eyes and sat awkwardly. Ismir is here, I'm afraid the lords have never attended such a great banquet. Goldo whispered to her husband Hood. The taste of this wine is really strange. Alfo, the blacksmith, took a sip of craft beer quietly, and his lips were covered with foam. There's a lot of meat. Mom, you'll eat more later. The barred swan touched the old mother's shoulder, and the old woman was dizzy and deaf, but this sentence could be heard clearly. Look, this knife and fork is silver, and the plate is also made of top-quality porcelain. Lucan, the owner of Shimu Trading Company, secretly took the knife and fork into his arms and was hit by his sister Chimera. The guard couldn't believe it when he saw these things. He set Lindala aside and said, 9 holy spirits, how much did you spend? Ah, don't worry about it. Everyone hasn't arrived yet. If you haven't, please come over quickly. Except for the shift guards, everyone has arrived, even the plowing cows in the field. That's great. Remember to go change shifts later and call in the ones on shift as well. Lind raised his glass and gave a toast, summarizing it in one sentence, drink. A burst of cheers made the people of Shimu town eat and drink happily. Lind watched as these hard-working and simple farmers enjoyed a feast they had never experienced before in their lives, and suddenly remembered the dinner that Professor Dumbledore had invited him to a Broken Cauldron bar a few days ago. Halfway through the meal, the guard grabbed a bottle of whiskey and walked over to Lind in a daze. You didn't forget the main thing, did you? Of course. Linda saw that he had all become so good at drinking, and the heat was almost over, so he stood up and announced that everyone could enter the house to collect eggs on their own. Everyone laughed and followed Lind towards the wooden house, one by one hunching their shoulders and backs. Some even rushed into the house with their oxen in their arms, unable to squeeze past the door frame and staring blankly. They didn't know that the door of the wooden house actually led to a library tower disguised as a storage room. If someone opened the window and looked inside, they would find that there was no one inside. The banquet lasted from noon until evening, and Lind, an untrusted wizard from another town, transformed into a loyal friend of the people of Shimu town. Gordo warmly invited him to move to the town, but Lind refused. He said that as a wizard, it would be better to live in isolation. If anyone has any difficulties in the future, they can come to him. After seeing off the stumbling villagers of Shimu town, Linda returned to tidy up the mess left by the banquet. The residual breath left by Mora has been basically cleared, and there is still a bit left that adheres to the poultry. We will deal with them again when there is a chance. The busyness of the past 2 days has made him very happy. Although he is a bit tired, labor is enjoyable, especially when it comes to making new friends. These Nord barbarians are all true to nature, and since they recognize him as a friend, they will really use their lives to protect him. While cleaning up the trash, Lind remembered another thing. He was sure to encounter more miscellaneous matters in the future, and if he could have more helpers, it would undoubtedly be beneficial. He is not afraid of dealing with people, but when choosing close helpers, he still hopes to gain loyalty. In the world of Harry Potter, there is a race of people who possess powerful magic, are loyal to their masters, work tirelessly, and have extremely high efficiency in handling tasks. Most importantly, they do not require a salary and can meet all their needs by providing them with food and accommodation. Occasionally giving them a small gift can make them happy all day long. This type of creature is a domesticated elf, similar to a fairy, both of which are short magical creatures with pointed ears and a morphology similar to that of underdeveloped human deformities. Ugly is a bit ugly, but Lind thinks he will like them. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Desire for Artifacts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Desire for Artifacts. After returning to the world of Harry Potter, Lind went to Gringotts again. The teller who received him last time greeted him with a smile and asked if he was satisfied with the service. What can Lind say? Although the price is a bit higher, the services of the fairies are quite reliable, without any shortcomings or substandard products. In their words, our staff have a good reputation guarantee. I hope to have one or several household elves. Please send me an announcement. Wizards who intend to transfer household elves can provide a quotation, and I will not hesitate to provide financial resources. This matter is entrusted to your bank as an intermediary, and I will provide 10% of the transaction price as your bank's intermediary fee. In addition, if the seller can be contacted before September 1st, I will pay an additional 500 crowns to your bank. Lin's tone is relaxed, full of the lazy temperament of a nouveau riche. The teller's eyes sparkled with gold, and he agreed with a smile. This matter cannot be achieved in the short term. Home elves are not laborers in the job market. They are monopolized by wealthy and powerful wizarding families, and only when they voluntarily sell, can others have the opportunity to purchase. This matter has come to a temporary end. Lind usually lives in the library tower and his beds have also been moved in. When in the library tower, Lind's learning state becomes very good. The previously obscure and difficult to understand textbooks can now be read smoothly and fluently, as if those knowledge are actively opening up to him. He can grasp the author's thinking between the lines, and the reading process is like communicating with a friend. From these friends, he learned that magic is an ancient skill. He heard the complaints of wizards about the depth and stinginess of truth, as well as their cheers, and was delighted to explore more mysteries. Every breath of text, Lind can empathize with it, and that knowledge is unconsciously imprinted in his mind. This learning method is truly joyful and addictive. In addition to theoretical learning, what impressed Lind even more was the help of the library tower in casting magic on him. If in the past, casting spells outside felt like praying for a response from the world, then in the library tower, he was giving orders. He swung his cypress wand to cast spells, starting with the simplest flicker of fluorescence and ending with a difficult and profound disappearance spell, all of which were a success. If he could learn the unforgivable curse, there is no doubt that he could immediately cast it. Because he possesses omnipotent power, all of his spells have received great bonuses in the library tower. Taking metamorphosis as an example, this knowledge can be considered the most complex course in the magic world. To master the basic shape-shifting technique, it requires hundreds of hours of theoretical learning, and then continuously exercise the mastery of the shape-shifting technique through repeated casting. And in this process, failure is inevitable. Lind knew he was not a genius in shape-shifting. When he first learned the shape-shifting spell, he used a deserted house as his object. At that time, he tried more than 10 times and finally turned a broken wooden board into a stool. Even the basic transformation of form is so laborious, let alone the transformation of nature. Every little progress is achieved through hard practice. But in the library, everything is different. His transformation curse is the golden rule: as long as his magic is enough to support him to complete his casting, as long as his theoretical knowledge allows him to recognize all the details, he can even turn stones into missiles. The kind that can be launched. Located in the library tower, Lind unleashes the power of magic to the fullest. The skills he has developed here, even if he leaves the library, can still be preserved to a certain extent. This is equivalent to quickly brushing proficiency. The book Pagoda provides Lind with a top-notch experience, experiencing the advanced application of magic spells firsthand, and making progress by 1,000 miles in a day. He quickly mastered silent casting, and then went further, casting without a staff. There is no distinction between day and night in the library tower, and Lind doesn't know how long he has been studying there. He is just hungry and thirsty, constantly acquiring knowledge and strength. As he remembered the last textbook's secretary in his mind, Lind began to resonate with his magic, which was an instinct akin to superpowers. Casting a spell was like waving an arm, manipulating fingers, and being able to do it without thinking. At this point, he was finally willing to relax, slow down the pace of life, and think about the future path. His first thought was how to upgrade the library tower. As a realm of annihilation, the library tower is not considered to have all 5 organs. It lacks a heart, just like cars need engines. The realm of annihilation also needs energy cores. It is not only the son of the divine kingdom, but also the source of magical power. Nowadays, the operation of the library tower cannot be separated from Lin's own magic, just like seeds require rain and dew for irrigation. Lin's magic cannot even be considered a light rain, at best it is a mist. The work of building an energy core is the direction that Lind should strive for in the future. He has actually chosen a target. There are a lot of artifacts in the world of the Elder Scrolls, many of which are crowded in the Sky Province, leaving behind a wholesale of cabbage. When his strength grows further, he can try to seek it. As for now, there is no need to worry. Linda took the time to study several items that followed him through, mainly forks, pajamas and mobile phones. The luosafen that fell on the ground must not be found. His research was indeed fruitful. All the items that followed him had certain magical properties, and the instant noodle fork had the function of guiding magic, which is why it can be used as a wand. Pajamas have the function of self-healing, and even if burned to ashes, they can slowly recover. Mobile phones are quite unique, as all applications that require internet connection have become invalid, including phones. However, Lind can use the copy curse to copy the phone, and the copied phone is the original copy. They can communicate with each other on the phone, even if there is no signal, no SIM card inserted, and can even make calls to other worlds. Linda's expression was strange. He remembered the behind-the-scenes from Journey to the West. Bai Xiang called Zhang Fengyi and said he was eating Tang monk's meat by the Yongding River magic. It's amazing, isn't it? In the world of the Elder Scrolls, after the banquet, Lind bought all the poultry raised in Shimu town. Only these creatures with souls would attach the imprint of the demon god's aura. The weaker the soul, the weaker the residual aura. Only tiny creatures like insects could carry the demon god's aura. He gathered the last bit of Mora heterogeneity, and these breaths spontaneously condensed into a cloudy yellow-green eyeball the size of a marble, covered in blood, looking weak and painful. Studying Mora's aura is very helpful for Lind to improve his magical skills, but it is too profound. Even though Lind has an omniscient perspective, with his current level of knowledge, he cannot decipher the essence of the demon god. Helpless, they had to temporarily seal it up. The turmoil and gains brought by Mora have come to an end. Lind began to enjoy the remaining time of his vacation and stayed in the world of Harry Potter all day, occasionally practicing spells to avoid manual labor. He would wander around London during the day, shopping for books and magical materials in Diagon Alley, and then running to the library to buy books about the human world, including mathematics, physics, biochemistry, and agriculture. He was open to visitors. Although there is a gap between magic and science, they can also be learned by analogy. If you have free time in the afternoon, carry a bag of bread to Trafalgar Square, also known as Big Dog Square, to feed the pigeons. His former roommate proposed to his girlfriend here, and a white dove flew up. The scene was quite dreamy, but there was a lot of bird droppings. Later, my roommate and girlfriend got divorced, and at that time they were still pursuing a PhD. My roommate was searching for life and crying like a child weighing over 200 pounds. Lind would pull him and feed pigeons every day. The pigeons of the 20th century were still so greedy, and the weather in London was still so unpredictable. Suddenly, a light rain started to fall, and Lind hesitated whether to use a magic spell to avoid the rain. A brown-haired girl walked over with an umbrella and said, "Didn't you bring an umbrella?" She handed him a spare long-handled umbrella. "Thank you." Lind smiled at her. "There aren't many kind-hearted girls like you this year." The girl smiled awkwardly, her face flushed, and she turned around to run back to her parents. The middle-class couple politely waved at Lind. He put the unfinished bread into his arms, tightened his short windbreaker, and quickly left the Big Dog Square. It hasn't been a few days since I left school. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Dry Life of Rich People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Dry Life of Rich People. The most famous wizarding school in the world of Harry Potter is Hogwarts. Of course, there is no doubt that the other colleges can only be ranked second. The most famous magic school in Skyline Province is Winter Castle Academy, whose history can be traced back to the First Age. The Great Wizard of Nord, Shalido, created a platform for spellcasters to communicate and discuss, becoming a system that future wizards strive to imitate. If these two colleges are compared, then Hogwarts can be considered a primary and secondary school with a systematic teaching process and stricter school management. Correspondingly, young apprentices can have a relatively safe growth environment. But no matter what, magic is dangerous, Muggle schools may even die, and it is normal for accidents to occur in magic schools. Dongbao Academy is a university, and as long as they pass the test and are selected, each mage can decide their own research direction, with less constraints. Similarly, they also face greater risks, as the apprentices who secretly summon demons underground in the Winter Fortress have no bones left. Lind took advantage of the holiday to pick out all the books that could be bought in the Lycan bookstore. Now they are already exhibits in the library tower, with 3 walls set up. Looking at the Lind's dazzling bookshelf, Lind felt a sense of joy in his heart, satisfied with his hoarding obsession. In terms of knowledge level, he is fully capable of participating in OWLS, Ordinary Wizarding Level Exam, and NEW.T, Advanced Wizardry Test, but literally translated as a Super Fatigue Bombing Style Magic Test, LU. In terms of practical level, Lind's casting ability has also made significant progress. He has mastered the silent and wandless casting techniques of all the spells in the book, which is a remarkable achievement. For ordinary wizards, they may never reach this threshold in their lifetime. In Lind's view, they are just academic ghouls who wave their wands foolishly and cling to the rigid system left by their predecessors. Only wizards who truly touch the roots of magic can effortlessly integrate casting into daily life. Lind cannot be considered extremely talented. Before his time traveling, he was just an ordinary person, but now he is a demon god. If there is anything he doesn't understand, he can understand it with a little practice in the library tower. With his current abilities and knowledge, not to mention being a 5th grade transfer student, it is not a problem for him to directly apply for a professor position. So is it still necessary to go to Hogwarts? It's necessary. Lind covets the library at Hogwarts, and there's nothing bad about being a student. He enjoys the feeling of being at school, interacting with people, and carefree days will go by quickly. When he grows up, he won't have this leisure anymore. In addition to Hogwarts, Lind also has to go to Winterburg Academy, and he definitely needs to go there. It's not just to study the magic system of the Old Scrolls world, nor is it just for their library. More importantly, the plot of this academy involves an important artifact. The Eye of Magnus. Lind couldn't say he was salivating at Magnus' eye, it was also something he had been coveting for a long time. Why? It starts with the creation of heaven and earth. Magnus is one of the creation deities, hailed as an engineer, and the appearance of the mortal world was designed by him. However, when he realized that maintaining the mortal world would require a huge sacrifice, and it was likely to be in the hands of God, Brother Ma had no political consciousness and ran away overnight with his engineering team carrying buckets. Comrade Panga next door stood tall without saying a word, and the gap between God and God was really clear at a glance. The way these gods escaped was quite unique, as they opened holes in the sky, leading to the realm of light, and the light flowed from the holes to the mortal realm. Therefore, the sun and stars in the ancient scroll world were actually these holes. The hole that Brother Ma created was the largest, which was the sun. The energy flowing out of the light realm is the root of all magic, and the highest hope of all mages is to personally visit the light realm and explore the truth. Legend has it that the great sorcerer Shalido once visited the light realm, and there is indeed no one on the card of the founder of the Winter Castle Academy. The Eye of Magnus is said to be an artifact left by Brother Ma, containing endless magical energy. Lind wants to obtain the Eye of Magnus as the energy core of the library tower, and with this, he can squander his magic like a truly omnipotent deity. September 1st of World Eye is coming soon, and Gringotts has informed Lind that they have found the cellar of the house elf. Lind happily carried a suitcase of gold to his door. The wizard who sold the household elf came with his son. When Lind arrived, the child hugged his father and begged, "Dad, don't let Jilly go. Please, don't sell him." The domestic elf was also on the side. He looked pretty good, his skin was tight and smooth, and his eyes were clear. He was probably not very old, and now his head was drooping with a gloomy expression. "Oh, I'm sorry," the well-dressed wizard nodded at Lind and lightly patted his son's shoulder. "Don't do this, the family needs this money." Lind begged the wizard to go alone with him to the nearby meeting room to have a conversation. "Let your child say goodbye to this Carrie," he smiled at the boy, but the boy only glared angrily at Lind. As they walked into the meeting room, Lind immediately pointed out seriously, "You shouldn't have brought your child to participate in this transaction. Cheney is a stubborn child. Let's talk about the price. To be honest, I really don't want to sell Gary. He is a hard-working and intelligent little elf, very capable." The wizard praised his product endlessly. Lind threw the suitcase in front of the wizard and said, "All right, take these. Forget about Gary from now on, he's now my servant." The wizard was very dissatisfied with the child's attitude, and he shouted loudly, "Come on, you don't even understand how much Jilly means to our family. He's not just a domestic elf. He's also our family. We." Outside the meeting room, the boy held a domestic elf and secretly cheered his father's furious oath. "Jilly, did you hear that? Maybe Dad changed his mind and won't let you go." The wizard's angry eyes were wide open, and his momentum was like a roaring lion. With both hands, he slowly untied the buckle of the suitcase. He faced Lind, but his eyes rolled down. He shouted, "If you think money can buy a home. Ho, cough cough cough, cough 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 cough." As the dazzling golden light illuminated his face, the wizard suddenly transformed from a lion to a castrated cat, his tone falling sharply and his tone becoming extremely numb. He kept coughing, as if hundreds of fish bones were stuck in his throat. Lind. Calm uprising stare. JPG. The pale and greasy face of the wizard was filled with a yellow reflection, and he laughed and changed his mind, saying, "But then again, and trusting his family to treat his friend sincerely is 10,000 times better than letting him suffer in a miserable family, isn't it? So what, it's really enjoyable to talk to you about business. This young man, may Merlin bless you generously, and you will succeed in your studies and make a name for yourself in the future." Lind smiled slightly, thinking that the scene was very interesting. He looked at how the once proud gentleman was bowing under the temptation of gold. As an adult, Lind fully understands the words and actions of this wizard. He just feels a little emotional that the gold he once longed for is nothing but debris, and some changes are really sudden. As long as he possesses magical powers, he will never have to please others like this wizard. As Lind left the main entrance of Gringotts with his stuttering Carrie, the wizard also walked out with his crying son. The well-dressed guy used a floating spell, so that the heavy gold could float as lightly as his conscience. "Alright, don't cry, kid, you don't know how much money we've made." The wizard's whispered words gradually faded away. Lind met an unexpected acquaintance and said, "Oh, Merlin's beard, Professor Quirrell. Nice to meet you. Thank you again for your help." Quirrell, wearing a purple headscarf, sat on the roadside, seemingly constantly observing the Gringotts, or perhaps monitoring the wizards entering and exiting the Gringotts. When he saw Lind, his expression was slightly flustered, but soon he squeezed out a smile, and the two exchanged pleasantries before quickly saying goodbye. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Long Learning Path. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Long Learning Path. On the last day of August, Harry Potter had to discuss with his annoying uncle Vernon Dursley about taking him to King's Cross train station tomorrow. Since the hybrid giant Hagrid scared the Dursley family, the Dursley couple has completely accepted the fact that Harry is a wizard. No, it's more like giving up than accepting. Their family, especially Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, are extremely afraid of things like magic and wizards. Not to mention witnessing them with their own eyes, even a single mention can make them furious. However, we all know that Muggles' anger towards wizards is mostly due to fear and jealousy. Throughout July, the Dursley couple attempted to prevent Harry from receiving a notification from Hogwarts. In order to avoid the envelopes constantly being sent by the owl, Vernon even ran with his whole family to the reef, thinking that hiding on a stormy island would stop the wizard from searching for their savior. The result was a night-long visit by Hogwarts gamekeeper Hagrid, who clarified the matter and taught the Dursley family a lesson. Even now, Vernon Dursley still dislikes Harry, but he agrees to give him a ride tomorrow. "Anyway, we're going to London tomorrow, otherwise I wouldn't go to trouble," he said. Harry was already very satisfied with this answer. It was common for this household to treat him coldly and bully him. Occasional small favors made Harry couldn't help but feel happy. He kindly took a sentence, but it angered his uncle again. Harry asked, "What are you doing in London?" Vernon roared, "Take Dolly to the hospital. Cut off that damn tail before he goes to Smeaton." Hagrid once used magic to add a pig's tail to Harry's cousin Dudley, which was so shameful and terrifying that this bully would now run away as soon as he saw Harry. Harry was scolded by his uncle and rushed back to the bedroom. He buried his face in the bed, trembling incessantly, and finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. On the first day of mid-month, June, Lynn told the people of Shimu Town that he was going to Dongbao. "What are you doing there?" The guard was reluctant. "What stupid words to say, Kleiman. Winter Castle is full of mysterious guys like Lind. He's going to find his accomplices." The captain of the guard shrugged. "Tisk, what's that? It's too unpleasant to listen to. Just join in whatever you want, and Lind is not a thief." Many people in the tavern helped Lind. Kleiman clapped his hands and said, "All right, Lind, when are you leaving?" "I'll be with you. Since you have taken on the responsibility of being a guard, don't leave your post without permission," Linda advised him to stay. "Lind, as an outsider, you don't understand that the current Skyline province is not safe. It's too dangerous for you as a wizard to travel alone. I will serve as your sword and shield to escort you to the Winter Fortress." "Add me," Wooden Elf Farndal took the initiative to raise his hand. "Add me too." The Bard Swan refused to fall behind. "Add me." "I'll do it too." "Lind, they don't care. You need someone who is knowledgeable, like me. If you want to say that these guys are really bloodthirsty, every word you say will make dozens of people form a guard to escort Lind. This is just too enthusiastic. Lind said he doesn't need so many helpers. Clement, Farndal, Swan, let's go together. When I arrive at Winterburg, it will be safer for the three of you to come back. Lind is a wizard and can be considered one of the top spellcasters in the low demon world. Kleiman is a standard swordsman, and it's not easy to become a guard. What he lacks is the refinement of blood and fire. Farndal is a mediocre ranger, and as a wooden elf, at least his archery skills are decent. Swan, he also knows some combat skills and can barely make a guest appearance as a thief. Most importantly, he can play the piano and sing for everyone on the road. This standard 4-person adventure team is formed, and in the D&D worldview, this adventure team has created countless miracles. The blacksmith prepared them with armor, swords, and arrows. Although, a middle-aged Nord man, was very unhappy. "My craftsmanship cannot be compared to a true master. If you go to Sherman City, you can get a better one." The farmers gave them dry food, the innkeeper gave them fur sleeping bags and tents, the business owner gave them honey wine to drink on the way, and the people of Shimu town worked hard to prepare the best for the group. They set off early on the second day of the mid-year month. The following route arrangement is as follows. First walk to Shuomon City, then find a coachman in the stable at the city gate, take a carriage to Fenghelm City, and finally walk to Dongbao. It is expected to take almost half a month. After a long journey, Lind finally stood at the entrance of the suspended corridor leading to Winterburg Academy, when a high elf woman blocked his way. She said, "Winter Castle Academy is the most focused organization on magic in the world, and its doors are only open to those who truly cast spells. If you want to join, you must prove yourself." Faruda is a tall and slender female tall elf with iconic pale golden skin, honey-like pupils, pointed ears, and a sharp jawline. She tied 2 short ponytails on her head, with a serious expression but a polite tone. "I am willing to prove my casting ability," Lind had anticipated. "Great, but before that, there's another important question. What kind of desire drives you to come to the academy? Is it pursuing the power of destruction to eliminate those who oppose you, or praying for warm and holy magic to heal your wounds? Is it a desire to make those around you obey you, or is it a desire for knowledge and mystery?" The Bard Swan spoke up and said, "Oh, this wizard friend, we all know that Lind will definitely pass your test, so don't ask any extra questions." Obviously, his eloquence did not convince Faruda, and she still stared at Lind with bright golden pupils. "Part of the reason is for knowledge, but mainly for an adventure." Interesting answer. "So you can start testing. Did you see the mark on the ground? Apply a healing hand to it." "I don't understand this spell. But I can learn it. I always learn things quickly." Faruda nodded and said, "You can purchase the corresponding spell textbooks from me or the palace mages in the city. When you have learned them, come to me for a test. Please give me a book called The Hand of Healing. 1 minute later, Lind returned. Faruda was a bit surprised and said, "Is there anything else?" Lind remained silent and released the apprentice-level spell of the Restoration Department, Hand of Healing, towards the imprint of the academy on the ground. "Is this what you just learned?" Faruda's expression froze. "May I ask when I will be able to apply for admission?" Lind was calm and composed. He thought this entrance test was quite fun. If he returned to World I in the future and met the savior Harry Potter on the way to Platform 9, he could use this method to tease the children along the way. If he didn't meet him, then it was fine. End of this chapter.